The wind carried a metallic tang that crept through the canyon, tangling with the dust of 100 years' worth of cattle trails. Cole Harris, alone on his ranch at the edge of the arid highlands, squinted across the slope where the sun struck raw against jagged rock. He had walked this land since he was a boy, tracking stray calves and patching fences, but today something was off. A line of shadows stretched unnaturally along the tree line, and at the edge of the ravine, a shape swayed in the wind. A tree hung heavy with heat, and beneath the branches, a girl of maybe 12, skin bronze like the clay beneath his boots, swayed gently. Her arms were bound with frayed rope, and around her neck, a crudely painted sign swung in the wind. "White man don't forgive." Cole's pulse throttled into a steady rhythm, each beat a drum against the heat-hazed silence. He had faced storms and stampedes, the collapse of fence lines, even the occasional rustler with fire in his eyes, but nothing prepared him for this. The girl's wide eyes locked with his across the canyon, fear raw, unspoken, and Cole felt the gravity of the warning. Someone meant this to be seen, meant him to see it. And he had the unbearable weight of choice: intervene without backup, or retreat and risk the unknown threat's next move. He drew his old, reinforced holster, fingers brushing the cold weight of the rail-kinetic pistol. The technology was simple, but effective compact, with a short reload cycle, enough to give him leverage until reinforcement arrived. The canyon distorted sound, so he relied on the feed from his drone, a small quadcopter with infrared and motion tracking. Its battery was at 72%, enough for a brief surveillance sweep. The drone hovered silently above the girl, its cameras slicing through heat distortion. As he studied the monitors, Cole's stomach tightened. Footprints crisscrossed the dry creek bed, not made by animals. There were boot treads, deliberate, calculated. Whoever did this had been here recently. He crouched behind a boulder and keyed his come. "Harris here. I have a visual on the girl. Signs of hostile engagement. Requesting intel patch." His voice was low, measured. In his world, exposure could mean death. Static hissed for a heartbeat before a reply. "Cole, read you. Sensors indicate 3 hostiles armed with electromagnetic disruptors in the canyon. Range 200 meters, moving east to west. Thermal signatures masked intermittently. Minimal visual feed until line of sight is clear." Cole's jaw tightened. The disruptor's short-range pulse weapons designed to fry drones and come. Relays explained the faint interference he had noticed on his monitor earlier. He knew the tech. It could scramble his sensors, disable his rail pistol targeting, even mask enemy signatures entirely. He also knew that their range was limited. He had a split-second advantage if he moved carefully. The girl whimpered as the wind rattled the sign. He noted her bindings were crude but tight, the rope likely friction-treated to resist cutting. His mind raced. To approach directly risked triggering any hidden sensors or traps. To wait risked exposure and escalation. Tactical patience became instinct. Cole activated the drone's thermal sweep, scanning the canyon's folds. One of the signatures moved erratically, hiding behind rocks. Another stayed fixed near a ridge. A third crouched along the slope, scanning downstream. They were organized, but not flawless. He noted patterns. They favored line-of-sight concealment, kept staggered intervals, and avoided clustering near cover to prevent collateral damage from improvised kinetic traps. He keyed the come again, voice barely above a whisper. "Intel confirms movement pattern. Suggest diversion, minimal approach." "Understood," came the reply. "E to A extraction 42 minutes. You're on your own until then. Suggest environmental leverage. Be advised, disruptors may activate at any moment." Cole exhaled slowly, centering himself. He had no reinforcements. This was his responsibility. Alone, on the edge of the ranch, faced with technology he could barely outrun. And above all, a child in immediate danger. He crouched low, weaving behind rocky outcrops, careful to stay in shadows while the heat shimmered along the canyon floor. The first obstacle was a ridge 30 meters ahead. A direct dash would make him visible. A climb along the slope risked dislodging rocks that would betray his movement. He chose a tortuous path along a dry wash where the rock formed natural tunnels and shadowed hollows. The disruptor operators might have thermal sensors, but the canyon's folds created blind spots, and he exploited each one with meticulous care. He paused behind a boulder 30 meters from the girl, eyes narrowing. The wind shifted, carrying the faint hiss of electronics pulse disruption prepping. His heart hit a steady cadence. Any sudden movement could trigger a defensive pulse, frying his comms and leaving him blind. He counted silently, then flicked a small EMP grenade designed to briefly overload microcircuits without harming living tissue down. The slope to create a controlled interference. The disruptors blinked momentarily, the signature on his monitor jittering. A heartbeat of opportunity. He moved. Fast. Silent. Every step calculated. Boots gripping dust and stone. The girl's eyes widened as he approached, and he whispered, "It's okay. I'm here." She tried to speak, but choked on a sob. He reached her and knelt, scanning the surrounding cliffs for threats while kneeling at her side. The rope bindings were thick, friction-treated, and rigged to resist force. He drew a compact cutting rail, a device that emitted an oscillating blade capable of slicing through tough synthetic fibers. Its power cells hummed briefly, heat blooming along the edge. The rope gave way with a metallic rasp. She fell into his arms, trembling. "Are you hurt?" he asked, scanning rapidly. Her breathing was rapid, but her limbs moved freely. "No external injuries. They'll come back," she whispered, voice cracking. They said, "I know," Cole said, pressing a reassuring hand to her shoulder. "But we move fast and we use the shadows. You follow my lead, understand?" She nodded, clutching his jacket. They moved as one, descending into the canyon wash. The first pulse disruptor blinked, barely audible over the wind. Cole had anticipated it. He tucked the girl behind a rock as the disruptor fired, the pulse crackling harmlessly past. Frying only the drone feed he had just switched off, the canyon erupted into chaos as 3 more pulses detonated along the rocks ahead. Cole ducked low, dragging the girl along while simultaneously firing short rail bursts to create sonic distractions. The shots weren't meant to wound, they were to create misdirection. The disruptor operators paused, scanning for origin points. Giving him just enough time to duck behind the next shadow, the girl's grip on his arm tightened. They're coming closer," she said, teeth chattering. "They have to get to us first," Cole replied. "And we're going to make them regret it." A low rumble reached them, the faint vibration of heavy boots on stone, followed by a mechanical hum. Reinforcements? Or heavier weaponry? Cole's mind raced, calculating options. They could take a ridge, create elevation advantage, or push deeper into the canyon folds where line of sight and disruptor range diminished. He chose the latter. "Move," he hissed. Shadows swallowed them. Dust rose behind him, a ghostly veil. The canyon funneled them toward a narrow pass, perfect for ambush, but he knew it. He had to rely on speed, timing, and the girl's ability to follow without hesitation. Then a sudden pulse hit. The drone feed died entirely. The canyon fell into static silence, broken only by the hiss of wind and the girl's ragged breathing. Cole froze, feeling the heat bloom along his back where electronics fried. The disruptors were closer than anticipated, exploiting blind spots he hadn't predicted. He glanced at the girl. She was frozen, eyes wide. He clenched his jaw. There was no hesitation left. He whispered, almost to himself, "Time to improvise." He sprinted the last 10 meters to the canyon's choke point, dragging the girl behind a jagged boulder. The disruptors emerged on the ridge above, scanning, uncertain. Cole dropped a smoke flare, its chemical veil thickening, masking heat and movement. Through the haze, he glimpsed one operator's rifle swing. Reflexively, he hurled a rock, triggering a landslide of pebbles down the slope. The disruptor operator stumbled. Distracted, Cole whispered into the girl's ear, "We run on my mark." A shadow detached itself from the ridge, a second operator. More cautious, scanning for thermal differences. Cole counted seconds. Every pulse fired, every step calculated against the canyon walls was a risk. But opportunity glimmered. He felt a surge of determination, raw and unyielding. They would escape, somehow, but as he readied the girl to sprint, the wind carried a chilling sound, the faint, mechanical whine of a heavier device, something that wasn't in his initial sensor read. His stomach dropped. This was no ordinary disruptor team. They had escalated. Cole's teeth ground together. He tightened his grip on the girl's hand. The next move would decide everything. Cole's pulse thundered in his ears as the whine grew louder, mechanical and precise, a predator seeking prey. The canyon, once a sanctuary of shadows and wind, now became a corridor of risk. He crouched behind the jagged boulder, calculating options as the girl trembled beside him, silent except for shallow breaths that mirrored his own. The heavier device, unmistakable, now a compact rail drone swarm launcher, was mounted on a ridgeline, its sensors scanning the folds of the canyon for heat signatures and movement. If deployed, even a single rail drone could pin them down, shred cover, and force them into a lethal trap. Cole weighed the variables in a heartbeat. He had no time for hesitation. The girl's life, fragile and real, depended on choices made in fractions of seconds. He pulled a small tablet from his jacket, its worn casing scarred by previous skirmishes, and activated the com feed. Static hissed. Reinforcements were hours away. "Harris, we have a swarm launcher. 2-3 hostiles, thermal masking, blind spots minimal. Extraction delayed. Advice?" A voice crackled back, steady but strained. "Cole, understand the risk. Swarm deploys in 30 seconds once activated. You're underpowered, but environment favors lateral evasion. Use terrain masking, follow the ridge's blind spots, improvise kinetic decoys. Thermal suppression recommended. Extraction window still 40 minutes. You run the clock." Cole nodded, almost imperceptibly, to the girl, then whispered, "We improvise." Eyes sharp, move fast. The canyon slope offered a precarious path, a thin ledge running along rock faces, dust and gravel precarious underfoot. Cole's mind calculated every microstep, balance, lateral cover, weight distribution. He could make the ledge, and if he timed correctly, the drone swarm's first wave would miss them entirely. He grabbed the girl's hand. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They sprinted along the ledge, gravel skittering beneath boots. The swarm launcher's whine crescendoed, then erupted into a series of micro-drones, kinetic edges glinting in sunlight. Cole pressed the girl flat against the cliff as the first wave passed, missing them narrowly. He counted the pulses of motion, anticipating the reload cycle. He had exploited the swarm's targeting algorithm flaw. Its sensors could not track simultaneous lateral movement at close range along irregular surfaces. "Keep moving," he hissed. They scrambled along the ledge, one hand gripping rock, the other clutching improvised thermal dampeners coated blankets he had woven from solar reflective material. The drones passed overhead, blind to the suppressed signatures, and Cole exhaled sharply. The girl's eyes were wide, panic gnawing at her features. They can't reach us if we're smart," he said, voice firm but low. "Stay with me." They reached a junction where the ledge widened into a small recess behind boulders. Cole paused, scanning the canyon below and above. The disruptor team was reorienting, frantically attempting to recalibrate sensors after losing visual. He had bought a few minutes, a tactical window he intended to exploit fully. He pulled a compact kinetic trap from his pack, a small device capable of releasing a concentrated rock slide along a narrow path. Its battery was short-lived. One use only. He positioned it on the ledge above the canyon wash where the disruptor's heavy boots had passed moments ago. A micro-trigger would send the rocks tumbling precisely when the enemy advanced. It was dangerous timing, had to be exact, but it could delay. Pursued enough to create a critical escape corridor. The girl peered over his shoulder. "Will it hit them?" "Yes," he said, eyes never leaving the ridge. "But it's temporary. Enough for us to get clear." He set the timer. Then they moved again, descending into a narrower ravine where the temperature shift created natural thermal interference. Dust swirled in the heat currents, masking the girl's smaller heat signature. Cole felt the tactical advantage. He could move unseen, at least momentarily, but the canyon funneled them, leaving limited options. One misstep and the disruptor's line of sight would realign, and they'd be trapped. They rounded a bend, and Cole spotted signs of something unusual. Small bundles of synthetic fabric, metallic shards embedded in the canyon floor and shallow trenches. It was an ambush trail, abandoned but recent, indicating the disruptor team had shifted positions multiple times. He counted 4 potential enemy observation points, all within range of lethal pulse or rail weaponry. "We're not alone," he muttered. The girl's grip tightened, but she remained silent, instinctively trusting. Cole crouched behind a rock, pulling a micro-drone from his pack. Unlike the first drone, this one carried a passive sensor suite, designed to feed only thermal and motion data without emission, avoiding disruption. He deployed it, letting it float above the ravine, eyes scanning. Signals blinked 3 hostiles ahead, 2 behind, one hidden in the shadows to the east. He swallowed. "We're in the middle. No direct path. Need lateral maneuver." Cole's mind raced, calculating probabilities, distances, and timing. He realized the only viable route required doubling back along a ridge partially masked by thermal distortion. It was risky, but it put the disruptors between 2 tactical zones, a kill zone if mishandled, a bottleneck if used cleverly. He whispered, "We split the path. I'll draw them toward the ridge. You stay low, follow my cues. Got it?" The girl nodded, and he signaled with hand gestures, slow, deliberate, minimizing exposure. Timing became everything. One misstep, one pulse too early, one thermal signature misread, and the canyon would become a tomb. Cole moved first, sprinting a short distance to draw attention. The disruptors reacted predictably. Pulses fired, but with minimal effect, their aim disrupted by the dust and terrain masking. He ducked behind a boulder, then rolled laterally toward the blind spot he had identified. The girl mirrored, hesitating only once before following. They gained the ridge, the sun casting long shadows, heat bloom distorting vision. Cole assessed option signals, indicated that the disruptor team had regrouped and was preparing for a coordinated approach. He noted an exploitable flaw. The team's pulse weapons had a cooldown after 3 shots in rapid succession, leaving them temporarily defenseless. He whispered, "Now, move fast." They descended the ridge, careful to remain outside predicted lines of fire. As predicted, the disruptor operators fired their pulses, but they were empty now. The cooldown enforced by thermal regulators to prevent device overheating. Cole used the pause to advance, dragging the girl behind another rock. They reached a temporary natural shelter, a narrow canyon alcove where dust and heat created effective thermal masking. Cole crouched, scanning. The girl's chest rose and fell rapidly. "We can't stay long," he said. "They'll figure this out." He pulled out a small sensor relay, activating it briefly to monitor pulse activity from a distance. Signals flickered. 2 hostiles were attempting to flank, unaware of the alcove's cover. Cole noted their movements. One, heavier, carried a kinetic disruptor, the other a thermal blinder. He analyzed patterns, calculating odds of intercept if he moved now. A sudden flash. The canyon's dust shivered. Another pulse fired, narrowly missing the alcove. Cole pressed the girl down, heart hammering. "We're running out of time," he whispered. The tactical analysis became instinct. He grabbed 2 small thermite charges, placing them along the ridge behind their path. Not to harm, only to create an impassable diversion heat plume, smoke, and debris enough to force the disruptors to retreat temporarily. Timing had to be perfect. He glanced at the girl. She was pale but alert. Her trust was absolute. He felt the weight of responsibility. One miscalculation could end everything. The charges ignited. Fire and smoke erupted, forcing the disruptors to halt, recalibrate, and risk exposure. Cole seized the moment. "Run," he hissed. They sprinted, navigating through natural cover, his mind continually adjusting for terrain, enemy behavior, and the girl's stamina. Then came a sound he had not anticipated, a heavy stomp behind them. Cole spun, just in time to see one disruptor, faster than anticipated, gaining ground. The girl stumbled. Cole reached out, yanking her upright, but the disruptor was closer than calculated. A pulse snapped from the operator's device. Narrowly missing Cole, the canyon's dust swirled violently, and for a moment, it seemed the rhythm of pursuit had caught them. Cole's mind raced, scanning the next microenvironment, a shallow cave partially hidden by debris, thermal masking from heat shimmer. "Only 10 meters, almost there," he shouted, dragging the girl. A rock shift, a stumble, the disruptor closing, but as they dove into the cave, the pulse grazed the cliff above, sparking a shower of debris that temporarily blocked pursuit. Cole collapsed, chest heaving. The girl trembled in his arms, tears streaking dirt across her face. Outside, the disruptors were grouped, frustrated, recalculating their attack vectors. Cole's mind did not rest. He noted every misstep, every environmental advantage, every technology limitation they could exploit next. "They'll come back," she whispered. Double quotes, "Yes," Cole said, voice low but unwavering. "And we'll be ready." In the back of his mind, a new calculation emerged. The disruptors weren't acting alone. Signals indicated a larger operation, coordinated beyond the canyon, perhaps extending into the surrounding highlands. Their intent was systematic, precise, and deadly. The girl's life was only one thread in a wider pattern of threat. Cole exhaled, scanning the cave's exit. Dust and light blurred the horizon. He knew the next move would be more dangerous, more calculated, more dependent on discipline, improvisation, and ruthless timing. And he knew with absolute certainty that they could not survive the next wave by instinct alone. A low hum began, deeper this time, reverberating through the stone. Cole's jaw tightened. Whatever was coming next would test everything they had survived. And this time, there would be no margin for error. The cave was little more than a cleft in the rock, but to Cole it was sanctuary enough to breathe, to think, and to plan. The girl crouched beside him, shivering, her small hands clutching his jacket as though it were armor. Outside, the canyon hummed with distant mechanical movement, pulse emitters recalibrating, drones buzzing in erratic patterns. Cole allowed himself only a moment to take stock. Their immediate survival was secured, but the greater danger loomed. Whoever had orchestrated this ambush had assets beyond the canyon, and the girl, innocent, fragile, was now the pivot of a far-reaching operation, Cole's mind flickered across tactical options. Extraction was still 40 minutes away, a window too long to rely solely on cover. He needed intel, mobility, and leverage over an enemy who was technologically superior and methodically patient. A glance at the girl reminded him of the human cost. He had to act decisively, not reactively. He keyed the small sensor relay, activating a low-power scan. Heat signatures rippled through the canyon in erratic patterns. 5 hostiles, 2 with disruptors, 1 directing a rail drone launcher, another monitoring thermal suppression, and the 5th he could only guess, serving as a commander or tactician. The pattern suggested coordination, intelligence, and prior reconnaissance. Whoever they were, they had planned for every conventional approach. Cole exhaled, mapping the canyon in his mind. He needed a gambit. If he could disrupt the coordination, isolate a segment of the enemy, he might carve a path to safety. The terrain offered limited options, but the canyon's natural choke points could serve as temporary fortifications. He adjusted his holster, fingers brushing the cool metal of the rail pistol. Short, precise bursts could create sonic distractions and, if aimed carefully, trigger preset micro-collapses along the canyon walls. "Cole," the girl whispered. Her voice trembled but carried a strange, quiet defiance. "They'll come back stronger." "I know," he said, "but we'll be ready. And we won't be alone." That was the truth. While the canyon offered isolation, Cole had allies beyond the immediate ridge. A network of field operatives, analysts, and logistical support, remote but invaluable, could provide tactical overlays, sensor augmentation, and countermeasures. He keyed the comm, using brief coded bursts to minimize electronic signature. "Field," he whispered. "We've confirmed swarm launcher deployment, 5 hostiles, 2 disruptors active, terrain masking optimal. ETA for full extraction remains 40 minutes. Need tactical overlay for ridge suppression and diversion planning." The voice on the other end was clipped, professional. "Copy, deploying remote sensors to feed low-latency overlay. Recommend kinetic diversion to disrupt enemy patterning. Micro-EMP and debris triggers at 3 intervals. You're still on your own until window opens." Cole swallowed. On his own, with only a sliver of remote intelligence, he had to force the enemy into a vulnerable posture. He gathered loose rock and small debris, arranging them in choke points along the canyon wash. Each was connected to a micro-trigger, designed to collapse or shift on command. Timing would be everything. A single misfire would expose their position. He glanced at the girl. She mimicked his careful movements, placing small stones along the edges. Her small hands were nimble, precise. Somehow, despite her fear, she understood instinctively what was at stake. The first wave came as predicted pulses streaked across the canyon, seeking thermal signatures. Cole pressed the girl down, letting the micro-triggered rock slides activate. Debris tumbled down, creating chaotic noise, disorienting the disruptors. One misstepped, narrowly avoiding injury. The rail drone launcher operator cursed under his breath, recalibrating. Cole's gut told him they had achieved temporary disruption. He seized the moment. "Move," he hissed, dragging the girl toward the next vantage point. Their progress was slow but deliberate, designed to force the enemy to expend resources and reveal patterns. Each pulse, each attempted flank, taught Cole something new: reload cycles, cooldowns, response times, line-of-sight dependencies. Knowledge was leverage. The canyon twisted sharply, forcing them into a narrow pass. Cole recognized it immediately as a potential trap, the kind designed to funnel prey into an easily neutralized corridor. But he also recognized its tactical potential. A series of collapsible boulders could create an artificial bottleneck, isolating a segment of the disruptor team. He needed to sacrifice rock triggers that would block part of the canyon, buy time. and perhaps eliminate one hostile without direct engagement. He whispered instructions to the girl, and together they set the charges. Each rock positioned with precision, designed to tumble at the slightest provocation. He checked the timing sequences twice, then once more. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, though her small form quivered with tension. Cole moved first, dragging her behind as the first rocks fell. Chaos erupted. The disruptor operators scrambled, caught in the sudden collapse. One faltered too close to the edge, sending a pulse launcher skidding across the gravel. Cole seized the opportunity, firing a short-range rail burst. The metallic echo rang hollow but effective, disabling the device. They pressed on, each step calculated. The canyon began to open into a wider basin, but signals from remote sensors indicated two new hostiles converging from the east. Reinforcements. The enemy was adaptive, learning quickly. Cole's jaw tightened. There was no margin for error. He pulled the girl behind a boulder, scanning rapidly. One of the disruptors attempted to flank, moving along an unseen ridge. Cole estimated the timing, 6 seconds before line of sight would expose them. He activated a small drone, sending it overhead to create thermal interference. The flanker paused, scanning erratically, recalibrating sensors. Cole counted. 3, 2, 1, and then they moved. Sprinting through the temporary obscurity, the girl stumbled, almost catching her foot on a jagged stone. Cole yanked her upright mid-fall, pulling her along. "Stay close," he shouted. They rounded a sharp bend, and Cole glimpsed movement ahead, an abandoned supply cache, partially covered by tarp and dust. Tactical opportunity. If they could access it, there might be additional energy packs, micro-EMP charges, or improvised tools. He pried the tarp aside. A small cache of supplies gleamed in the dim light power cells. A compact rail drone, thermal blankets, and a handheld sensor array. Cole scanned the contents, calculating how each could be integrated into their escape. He loaded a few essentials into his pack and handed a sensor array to the girl. "You'll help monitor threats," he instructed. "We move smart, we survive." Her nod was firm, determined, her fear replaced by a sliver of resolve. Cole assessed the canyon ahead. Enemy signals were converging. 2 disruptors were adapting their patterns. A third remained near the ridge, controlling the rail drone. He needed to split their attention to force a misallocation of resources. A diversion at false target was the only way. He pulled a reflective panel from his pack, arranging it at a distance. The sun's angle allowed him to mimic a heat signature of a human body. Then he triggered a small sonic device, producing a footstep-like vibration across the canyon floor. The disruptors reacted immediately, pulses fired. The rail drone swiveled, and one operator fell for the ruse. Expending precious seconds recalibrating, Cole moved the girl along a secondary ridge, closer to concealment, exploiting the temporary chaos. Each step was exhausting, sweat and dust clinging to his skin, every muscle taut. He noted the girl's pace faltering. He slowed, adjusting his stride to support her. Whispering encouragement, they reached another choke point, a narrow gorge leading to the canyon exit. Cole analyzed the thermal patterns, the wind currents, the pulse cooldown cycles. The disruptor team was regaining composure, but there was still a window. He deployed 2 small micro-EMP devices along the approach corridor. Their brief discharge with blind sensors and temporarily disabled disruptors' targeting systems. The devices activated. A soft hum, then silence, then the faint flicker of disrupted signals. Cole counted. 10 seconds, 15. Enough. He sprinted with the girl, pushing through dust and gravel, each step calculated, each breath measured. But then came the betrayal, or at least the unforeseen complication. From the canyon rim, a figure emerged, cloaked in shadow. Cole froze, gut twisting. It was not part of the disruptor team. They had been tracked, studied, manipulated by someone else. The figure raised a handheld device, signaling or communicating with the enemy. Cole realized instantly their extraction had been compromised. The larger operation extended further than anyone anticipated. Every movement, every tactical gambit they had executed was now being observed, calculated against. The girl's grip tightened, pulling him from his thoughts. Who is that? She whispered. Cole's jaw tightened. Someone controlling more than we thought, and now they know we're coming. He calculated the odds. The canyon exit was still reachable, but only if he forced the enemy into a predictable engagement pattern, exploiting terrain and timing. The stakes had just escalated from survival to confrontation, and mistakes would be lethal. Cole whispered almost to himself. Time to turn the hunt into a trap. As the figure on the rim activated a flare, sending a blinding light down the canyon, Cole's mind raced through contingencies, potential sacrifices, and the cost of action. The pulse emitters flared in response. The rail drone hummed, preparing for intercept. And in that instant, Cole understood the next few moments would decide everything. Cole's mind raced as the canyon flare seared the shadows, revealing the figure perched on the rim, a silent observer controlling more than the immediate disruptor team. The rail drone's hum increased in pitch, responding to signals from the unseen operator. Cole adjusted the girl's grip, feeling her shiver, and whispered, "Stay close. Watch my lead." Every instinct in his body screamed that the next few minutes would decide survival, not just escape. He scanned the terrain. The gorge narrowed into a funnel, natural stone walls forming near-perfect choke points. He could exploit this, force the disruptor team into predictable movement patterns, and isolate the more dangerous operators. But to do so, he had to lure the figure above the rim into revealing more than just oversight. A calculated gambit, and timing had to be flawless. Cole activated the small sensor array he had handed to the girl, its low-emission scanning illuminating microthermal variations across the gorge. He noted 3 primary movement patterns from the disruptors, 1 operator pacing the ridge, 2 advancing along the canyon floor, and the rail drone hovering near a cliff face, searching for thermal signatures. The figure above remained stationary, manipulating signals to mask and manipulate the swarm. Cole's pulse quickened. He had only one opportunity to exploit an opening before the enemy adapted. "Follow my lead," he whispered. "We draw them into the bottleneck, then the ridge becomes our advantage." They moved cautiously, Cole leading, every step calculated. He triggered a small sonic decoy, a portable device mimicking footfalls across the canyon floor. Immediately, the 2 advancing disruptors adjusted course, rushing toward the decoy. The rail drone pivoted, scanning for heat, leaving its initial vantage temporarily exposed. Cole seized the moment, guiding the girl on a side path, partially obscured by the canyon wall. Toward an elevated ridge, the figure on the rim noticed the shift and activated a flare, signaling immediate recalibration. Cole calculated, if the operator initiated full swarm deployment, it would leave a temporary blind spot in the canyon's lower reaches. That was the precise gap they needed. He sprinted the final meters, dragging the girl behind natural cover, heart hammering with the tension of exact timing. As they reached the ridge, Cole crouched behind a jagged rock. He glanced at the girl. Her eyes were wide, reflecting terror and determination. "Almost there," he murmured. "We hold this point, and we control the next move." He deployed a small kinetic trap along the narrow ridge behind them, essentially a rolling boulder, tethered to a micro-trigger. It would delay pursuit if the disruptors attempted to follow. Every device, every placement, was part of a larger strategy. Force enemy errors, exploit environmental advantages, and create windows for further tactical strikes. From the rim, The figure shifted, activating a new sequence. The rail drone hummed, then darted down the canyon, precision targeting thermal signatures. Cole assessed the threat. The drone had limited battery life and maneuverability along the canyon's vertical constraints. He had to exploit that weakness. Listen, he whispered to the girl. We used the drone's path. On my mark, we roll left through the shadow gap. 1, 2, 3. They moved in unison. The drone's sensors swept the canyon floor, blind to the shadow gap created by natural thermal distortions. Cole pressed the girl against the rock, feeling the faint vibration of the drone's approach, then sprinted to the next cover, pulling her behind him. The drone passed overhead, momentarily fooled, and Cole allowed himself the tiniest fraction of relief, but the figure above was relentless. Another pulse emanated from the ridge, a directed energy wave designed to disrupt electronics. Cole cursed under his breath. The sensor array in the girl's hands flickered, then partially failed. He had seconds to improvise. He activated a small EMP microcharge, releasing a pulse that briefly scrambled the drone's targeting system. The rail drone faltered mid-path, losing altitude, giving them another narrow window. Cole's calculations were precise. If they could exploit this lapse, they could reach the canyon's exit, forcing the disruptors into disadvantageous positions as they moved. Cole noted signs of the disruptors' secondary support, small energy packs and mobility boosters left along the canyon floor. Someone had anticipated prolonged pursuit, leaving logistical footholds. He marked each for future strategic raids. For now, they were distractions and potential hazards. The gorge opened into a wider basin. But with it came new threats, 2 disruptors reappearing from lateral cover, one wielding a heavier disruptor device capable of broader pulses. Cole glanced at the girl. We split, he instructed, his voice low but firm. You stay low, follow the shadows. I draw them to the ridge. She hesitated only for a heartbeat, then followed. Cole sprinted toward the ridge's central point, triggering a series of micro-collapses along the path. Rocks tumbled, forcing one disruptor to halt, recalibrating position. Cole ducked, felt the vibrations along his boots, and rolled to avoid debris, the second disruptor now in pursuit. From above, the figure's signals intensified. He had realized the diversion. The rail drone recovered mid-flight, but Cole had already anticipated the trajectory. He launched a compact rail burst, not to destroy, but to create sonic and visual misdirection. The drone faltered again, scrambling to regain stabilization. Cole reached the apex of the ridge, feeling the strain in every muscle. The disruptor operators below were forced into predictable lines, channeled by the canyon's natural bottlenecks. He keyed the come briefly, coordinating with remote support. Ridge secured for ambush. Prepare secondary intervention on eastern flank. Micro-ME devices in place. A low rumble beneath his feet drew his attention. One of the larger boulders, previously loosened, shifted, threatening to collapse. Timing was critical. Cole adjusted weight distribution, keeping the girl safe behind cover. He felt the canyon itself become a weapon, each rock, slope, and thermal distortion a tactical tool. Then came the unforeseen complication, the figure. Above released a secondary swarm micro-drones, smaller but faster than the previous, designed to identify heat signatures and relay data back to the disruptors. Cole cursed. The canyon's narrow confines meant these drones could corner them quickly. He deployed another EMP microcharge, targeting the swarm's initial cluster. A cascade of sparks and electronic interference blinded the micro-drones long enough to allow movement. Cole sprinted along the ridge with the girl, diving behind natural cover as the drones recalibrated. The disruptors below, seeing the drones falter, hesitated. Cole used that moment, deploying another micro-collapsible boulder. It tumbled down, the slope colliding with two disruptors' positions, creating debris and confusion. One fell, disabling his disruptor device. The other scrambled, unable to target effectively. Cole's mind was a calculation of time, distance, and probability. Every step forward was measured, every device deployed precise. The girl mirrored his movements, learning, adapting, becoming an extension of his tactical awareness. As they rounded another bend, Cole spotted what could be a final choke point before the canyon exit, a narrow fissure, natural stone walls on three sides. Ideal for a last stand or diversion if necessary. He whispered instructions to the girl, setting up temporary barriers with debris to create a false corridor. The disruptors, forced into predictable paths, would now become vulnerable to controlled misdirection. From the rim above, the figure observed, signals intensifying, controlling the rail drone with precise timing. Cole's pulse quickened. He activated one final micro-imp, targeting the rail drone's command frequency. Sparks flew across the canyon floor, the drone faltering in midair. The disruptors' coordination began to break, their pattern disrupted. Cole took the girl's hand. "Run," he commanded. They sprinted through the fissure, debris funneling behind them. The canyon echoed with rocks tumbling, pulses firing, and the faint hum of the figure's failed interference dot at the canyon exit. Cole paused, heart pounding, surveying the terrain beyond. Open highlands stretched ahead, offering cover in distant ridges, but no immediate concealment. He knew the disruptors would attempt pursuit, but their coordination had been fractured. For now, survival was possible, but the figure above, the orchestrator, remained a threat. Cole's jaw tightened. Every choice, every micro-calculation had led them here, but the cost was evident. Exhaustion, resource depletion, and the undeniable fact that the operation controlling the disruptors extended beyond the canyon, potentially far beyond anything he had encountered. The girl looked up at him, determination flickering in her eyes despite fatigue. We did it. For now, Cole said, voice low, measured. But the war isn't over. They'll come back stronger, smarter, and we need to be ready. The canyon's mouth lay before them like a threshold freedom, yes, but also the beginning of the next phase. Cole surveyed the highlands ahead, calculating paths, potential ambush points, and opportunities for intelligence gathering. The disruptor's pattern had been exposed, weaknesses noted, and a plan for counteroffensive operations was forming in his mind. He took a deep breath, feeling the girl's small hand in his. The stakes had escalated, alliances tested, and the canyon had become a crucible of strategy, human will, and improvisation. But in that moment, the ridge behind them, the disrupted drones, and the fractured enemy coordination signaled a turning point. Cole whispered to himself, time to turn the tables. Cole and the girl emerged from the canyon's shadow into the sprawling highlands, the sun low on the horizon, casting long streaks of heat and dust. Every instinct told him the disruptors would pursue, but he had analyzed their patterns, predicted cooldowns, and exploited environmental constraints. This was no longer simply about survival, it was time to seize the initiative and force the enemy's hand. He glanced at the girl, who had begun to move with a tentative confidence, following each command, each subtle cue. "We're close to the plateau," he said. "Good vantage, cover, and sightlines. We make our stand there, and we end this." Cole knew the plateau was risky. Open fields meant exposure, but it also meant forcing the disruptors into predictable channels. He had prepared traps along the ascent, each micro-trigger, debris pile, an MP placement calculated to channel enemy movement and create opportunities to neutralize their advantages. The first signs of pursuit came in distant hums, the telltale approach of rail drones and pulse emitters. Cole activated his sensor array, tracking energy signatures, counting reload cycles, and plotting projected paths. There were 6 hostiles, one orchestrator remaining on the distant rim, directing operations remotely, using a compact relay device to manipulate drone movement and disruptor targeting. "Almost there," he whispered, tugging the girl along. Each step up the plateau was deliberate, gravel sliding underfoot, boots crunching over rock. He felt the tension tighten like a spring, knowing the final gambit depended on timing, coordination, and improvisation. At the plateau's edge, Cole paused. The terrain offered elevated cover with jagged boulders on 3 sides, natural choke points leading up the approach, and a shallow depression in the center that could serve as an ambush corridor. He positioned the girl behind the largest boulder, distributing sensor devices to monitor multiple angles. The first wave of disruptors arrived, approaching from the only navigable path. Cole triggered a small kinetic device, sending a controlled rock slide into their path. The lead operator faltered, device tumbling harmlessly but creating confusion. 2 pulses fired in response, narrowly missing the boulder behind which Cole crouched. Shaking gravel from above, he countered immediately with a short-range rail burst, not to kill, but to disable one disruptor's targeting system, sending it spinning across the plateau. The other operator scrambled, exposed, and Cole's trap fired a micro-collapsible boulder rolled, forcing the remaining disruptor into a temporary bottleneck. The rail drones swooped down and calculated arcs, but Cole's micro-EMP devices briefly scrambled their sensors, leaving a blind spot just wide enough for maneuver. He moved the girl along the plateau's depression, signaling her to adjust sensor monitoring, feeding him data on enemy movement above. The orchestrator on the rim realized the disruption and activated a heavier pulse array, an attempt to regain control. Cole anticipated this. Using the plateau's natural cover, he deployed reflective panels and directional thermal dampeners. The pulses skimmed the surface harmlessly, absorbed and scattered, leaving Cole's position intact. He keyed the come. Briefly, sending a coded message to remote support. Plateau secured, triggers deployed. Awaiting secondary extraction and reinforcement. Orchestrator identified on rim. Suggest diversion for engagement. The response was immediate. Remote support confirmed. Small squad of tactical drones en route, armed with kinetic dampeners and micro-EMP units, to arrive in under 5 minutes. Cole had calculated precisely that he could hold the plateau long enough to allow them to engage, creating a multi-vector assault without exposing the girl. The disruptors regrouped. Pushing toward the plateau's depression, Cole activated the final sequence of micro-triggers, collapsible rocks and gravel shifts designed to channel enemy movement into narrow lines. The first disruptor tripped, nearly losing balance, while the second tried to flank. Cole anticipated both moves, using precise rail bursts to neutralize the latter without lethal force. His focus was tactical, not gratuitous to stop the orchestrator. On the rim became frantic, signaling intensively, activating drone micro-relays to adjust patterns. Cole analyzed the signal feed, realizing that one well-timed diversion could force the orchestrator to reveal themselves entirely. He adjusted a reflective panel, angled precisely to catch the sun, producing a heat signature that mimicked his presence at the far edge of the plateau. The orchestrator took the bait, sending the rail drone into a downward sweep, exposing their remote relay. Cole triggered the final EMP device, frying the relay, disabling the rail drone mid-flight. The orchestrator cursed audibly from the rim, unaware of the collateral effect. Their entire network of field disruptions now struggled to operate independently, cut off from real-time guidance. Cole seized the moment. "Move," he shouted, dragging the girl along the depression toward a secondary ridge, offering safer cover. The disruptors, disoriented by loss of coordination, faltered. giving Cole precious meters of advance. The tactical drones from remote support arrived in a swirl of precision and speed, deploying micro-EMP nets to further disable the remaining disruptors. One was neutralized entirely, trapped in a kinetic web that rendered equipment useless. Another attempted retreat, only to trigger a collapsible boulder trap Cole had set minutes earlier, stopping pursuit cold. Cole paused, chest heaving, scanning the plateau. The girl was beside him, eyes wide but steady. He assessed casualties, minimal on their side. Disruptors incapacitated without lethal force. Orchestrator still visible on the rim, pacing. Furious and exposed, he keyed his comm, coordinating with remote drones. Orchestrator identified. Plateau advantage confirmed. Recommend tactical deception for capture or neutralization. The orchestrator, realizing the network was compromised, attempted a desperate pulse surge. Cole anticipated, moving behind a larger boulder, shielding the girl. Sparks and heat flared as the pulse discharged, but the micro-EMP shielding absorbed the brunt. Timing and positioning had saved them again. Cole considered the final engagement. The orchestrator's relay was vulnerable if approached. A direct assault was too risky. The figure had line-of-sight advantage and ranged weaponry. But the terrain offered one opportunity, a narrow natural chute leading from the orchestrator's position to the plateau, thin enough to allow a precise application of leverage using kinetic and EMP devices. He signaled the tactical drones to create controlled smoke and thermal distortion along the chute, masking any approach. Then, moving with the girl crouched behind cover, Cole advanced, step by step, triggering minor collapsible rocks to create noise and misdirection. The orchestrator reacted instinctively, sending the rail drone forward, but it was intercepted midair by a kinetic drone, deployed by Cole's team dot with line of sight disrupted. Cole launched a final EMP pulse, frying the orchestrator's relay device. The figure cursed, signaling blindly, then stumbled as one of Cole's collapsible rocks, precisely calculated, nudged them off balance. The canyon walls amplified the fall, but Cole moved quickly to prevent a lethal drop. Capturing the figure in a controlled restraint, Cole crouched, breathing heavily. The girl clung to his side, trembling but safe. The disruptors were incapacitated, the orchestrator captured. Strategic objectives achieved not by overwhelming firepower, but through discipline, improvisation, environmental leverage, and precise timing. He assessed the plateau. Extraction drones were en route, carrying both the girl and the captured orchestrator. Supplies were low, energy reserves stretched, but the operation had succeeded. Every risk, every improvisation, every tactical gambit had paid off. Cole looked at the girl. "We did it," he said softly. She nodded, a mix of relief and disbelief in her eyes. He allowed himself a moment to breathe, to feel the exhaustion seep into his bones. The canyon below lay quiet, the highlands beyond silent except for the faint hum of distant machinery. He had faced overwhelming odds, improvisation under extreme pressure, and emerged victorious. The plateau, the choke points, the canyon, every element of terrain and technology had been exploited to its fullest potential, yet Cole knew the cost. Fatigue, tension, and near misses left permanent marks, even if unspoken. He reflected on what the operation had taught him: patience, meticulous observation, exploitation of patterns, and above all, the value of human grit and coordination in the face of superior technology. The extraction drones landed, mechanical arms extending. Cole guided the girl aboard first, then the captured orchestrator secured for transport. As the drones lifted, Cole watched the plateau recede beneath him. Every strategic decision, every sacrifice, every improvised tactic had created a template for survival under impossible odds. The canyon, now quiet, bore the marks of battle-displaced rocks. Scorched dust and scattered debris, but also the evidence of ingenuity, resilience, and human determination. Cole exhaled, feeling a rare flicker of satisfaction. They had turned the enemy's strength against them, leveraged every constraint, and emerged a live dot as the drones lifted into the highlands. Cole keyed his comm once more. Mission complete. Extraction secured. All operatives accounted for. Orchestrator in custody. Plateau cleared. Tactical doctrine updated. The voice on the other end was measured, approving. Acknowledged, Harris. Well executed. Casualties minimal, objectives achieved. Debrief scheduled. Standby for transport to command. Cole looked at the girl, now calm, though still shaken. She had survived, learned, and adapted. And he realized, with quiet clarity, that the plateau, the canyon, the disruptors, they had all taught the same lesson: discipline, coordination, and adaptive strategy were the true keys to victory. Not luck or firepower alone. The drones ascended into the highlands, carrying both rescuer and rescued, captor and captive, leaving behind a canyon transformed by careful strategy, human determination, and the hard-earned cost of survival. Cole exhaled, the plateau shrinking beneath them, and felt the weight of what had passed and what would remain, a blueprint for facing impossible odds, a reminder of the cost of vigilance, and a testament to the enduring power of grit, ingenuity, and resolve. The mission was complete. The lesson endured. And in the quiet hum of the highlands, Cole knew one truth: battles could be won, lives could be saved, but only when discipline, coordination, and courage were forged in the crucible of pressure and necessity.